in a yard.
Madam Chair.
I call Hamish Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to reflect on a few areas that popped up during the review of the Primary Production Select Committee. On a number of occasions, the recent policy announcements from the Ardern-Peters coalition government that are going to have a severe and negative impact on rural communities like Clutha Southland. It's official, rural New Zealand is under attack. Whether it's the extra tax farmers in Gore or Mossburn will be paying at the pump for Auckland's trams, or the $3 billion alcohol allowance paid to students to go and drink their first year of student studies away, or last week's announcement to end offshore oil and gas exploration, an industry which will be destroyed, which employs over 8,000 high-paying jobs and contributes over $2.5 billion to our economy. Or just a couple of weeks ago, when the Rural Health Alliance was declined a mere $600,000, $1 to every rural person in New Zealand. They provide a great service to our rural communities, especially in areas like mental health. And last week's announcement of an interim climate change commission is worrying to the extreme. It seems likely that agriculture will be forced into the ETS. The list goes on and on. I was disappointed to hear funding for vital irrigation projects that support not only dairy but horticultural industries will be axed. This was announced around the same time hard-working and honest farmers in Otago and Southland were going through the worst drought in decades. I want to acknowledge the Otago and Southland farmers who have put up with so much hardship over the past several months. It's been a very challenging time on many fronts. First, there was the drought. Speaking with so many farmers who have been in the district for many, many decades, often told me this summer was the worst, the driest and the hottest they have ever experienced. As I drove round the electorate, looking at the land, usually green and lush at this time of year, it was brown and dry, looking more like a desert in the middle of Africa. Many farmers had struggled over summer to grow crops for winter. Once winter hits in a couple of months, some will really start to feel the pinch.
Could the member sort of come to the appropriations?
Sorry, Madam Chair. I asked. This was all related in the
well,
the
you
MPI
need to relate
review.
it in your speech.
That's right. In December last time, around the same time the drought was kicking in, along came Mycoplasma bovis, which has been widespread in Southland. M. bovis is a cattle disease, a bacterial infection that can cause a range of conditions in cattle. This disease affects animal welfare and production. And for the record, humans cannot catch this. The biggest risk is animal movement. If M. bovis spreads throughout New Zealand, we'll see a small decline in output. It won't bring the industry to its knees, but as a country, we will feel it. I want to acknowledge the rural support trusts across the country have been working hard, incredibly hard, assisting rural people, from owners to managers, staff and contractors in these tough times. I want to take this opportunity to thank the hard-working MPI staff on the ground who have worked long days and nights in the effort to eradicate this terrible disease. Speaking to some of the field staff, it's clear how committed they are. However, some admitted to me the fear that they have for their jobs due to the restructure currently underway, commissioned by the Minister of Agriculture. It simply isn't fair to put these hard-working staff under more pressure. I don't agree with the Minister's decision to waste $17 million to rebrand MPI just to put a few new stickers on the doors. During the MPI review, I did ask the head of MPI, how are staff feeling and how would they respond to another disease outbreak after they've been broken up into 4 departments? He couldn't answer. I want to just give one bit of credit to the Minister of Agriculture, and he's got a knack of doing this. Whenever he declares a drought, within 48 hours, the rain starts to appear, so I do commend the Minister of that one thing.
Point of order, Kiritapu, Allan.
Madam Speaker, I don't want to interrupt the last member during his fantastic contribution, but I did just want to just get I guess some clarification as to whether or not the House is still enabling newer members to read directly verbatim their speeches. We have had some direction in respect of that point.
That's fine. Newer members I do give a bit of licence to, but the member makes a good point that we are in debate, we're in committee, and it should be off the cuff. There are no more speakers on the primary sector? Okay. The question is that the reports of committees relevant to the primary sector be noted. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that the reports of committees relevant to the social development and housing sector be noted. And I give the call to the chairperson of